He works a lot in Boston, and to rush back for
Yeah.
6 o'clock meetings.
Okay.
Is not
You
doable
guys are on
for
the
me.
air.
Okay, we're gonna call the meeting to order. It's 6 o'clock, and this is the Finance Committee, and it's gonna be a nice, short, sweet meeting tonight. All right, we have a few things to go over. Basically, we're gonna focus on the budget. We have a few things I thought we'd go over, the goals and objectives, and we have one transfer request regarding the IT. Since we have an IT professional here, I'm gonna have him take a peek at it and
Yeah.
see what he thinks.
So long story short, I have been working a little with David and Molly offline about this. So we've been working in Northeast IT. In general, they put together a proposal a couple of years ago, or more of the IT health check of our various systems. I liked what I saw of what they were putting together, even though it was limited in scope. And this is the next step, working with them to kind of just upgrade our hardware and our infrastructure as a first step. So the proposal that we have in front of us is for a total of, what they quoted out to, it's around 40,000, but I want the exact number.
I think it's on the last page, yeah, 39,000 something, right?
Yeah, 39,000.
Is this it?
So David was able to pull together some funds from existing IT lines that we hadn't spent yet, that we had wanted to do something like this with, just in a couple different spots that we never got around to. So we pulled money from that and a couple other places, I believe, and basically noticed that we were 9,000 short, hence the reserve fund request that's in front of us now. So I think it makes a lot of sense. It's a good first step. I mean, ideally we get the override or find the money for IT staff to support this.
Mm-hmm.
But as it is now, I think there's $175 per year in just very basic upkeep that we'll be doing from them towards the end. Monthly, so 175 monthly to keep this up.
It's going to cost us 175
Yeah,
monthly?
working with Northeast IT.
Okay.
And some of that could be absorbed if we actually had IT staff,
Mhm.
to work on this. And what's here is basic enough that it's not like we're committing ourselves very hard in one direction, that there might be a difference of opinion if we brought in an IT director or something. This is just you're
So-
in the middle like an oil change in a car,
So what is this? Is this basically, is this new equipment, or is this just a contract that they're going to we're going to do supporting?
Yeah, basically the beginnings of file sharing in a server and
Okay.
some thin clients that can access that.
So are we getting a new server, or is this an existing
Yes,
server
this
then?
includes a Dell server priced at $6,500 for the big ticket items on here.
Okay.
For the starts of file sharing, as well as this also ties into another project with Laserfish that we're working on over in Northampton. I can bring you guys up to speed on that really quick. So over in Northampton, they use a file storage system called Laserfish for basically cloud saving your files on the network kind of thing. And because of a special arrangement that they had with them, Laserfish was really excited to bring them on board. They have basically extra licenses, so they can kind of sub-license to Hadley, so that we can work with Northampton to have a license to do some cloud storage of documents.
Oh.
So we're still working on that. Like I said, Molly and David are doing most of the heavy lifting on that, but this would presumably tie into that by giving us the actual hardware that we need to kick that off. Because right now it's bare bones, basically your home PC equivalent in every office here.
So we have a server right now, and I know at the fire station, because we've talked about it. Do we have a server down here? Where's our server now? Here.
I don't think we have a server here, a dedicated one. The fire station one's for the public safety because they have their own requirements and regulations for how they store their data and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's been vetted by Molly and David working with Northeast IT, who, after the last time we worked with them, it seemed like they know what they're doing.
Sounds good.
Glad to move forward with them. But I'm still getting up to speed on it all too, so as I learn more, I'll keep passing it on.
All right. Sounds good. And we have a motion to do the transfer of, let's see, what we have we need I think $9,336 to complete the payment for this project.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
And it'll
So
take
then we'll
your
sign-
guys' signature.
great.
We're still doing the 2 signatures on
Yeah.
one line.
Yeah, I just left your room.
You need to put a date there too.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So today I came over to and I met with just briefly met with David, Molly, and a few others as part of the financial management team that they have down here, and they just were going over revenues. They were talking about, just double checking their numbers, seeing if they're, getting all the bills out in a timely fashion, seeing if they could come up with any other, their focus was a lot on revenues. And the bottom line is, how it looks like is we're gonna have an increase this year of $384,000. So, but let's talk about a little bit of the negative now. The negative is David gives us this, right? This right here. So that's the revenue part, which this is right here, right? I think.
Oh, it's on the other side.
Yep. And it's the 384 is our increase in revenues that we'll have. But we are going to come up with a problem because this bottom line 381, okay, that's where he's coming up with. He's saying that between retirement, between the school choice assessments, the school department, he says that these are our extra expenses that we're automatically going to have right away. That's what David says. And so he's saying that 381 is going to eat up all of our new money. So now we don't have enough money because we have to focus on the difference. The difference is going to be the fire department that we just put in and the COLAs of all the different people that we just gave that to. So if you were taking the budget from last year and you added in all the COLAs and the fire department, we're going to be short, right? So I think that
What's your rough figure?
I don't have an exact one.
Rough.
Well, I don't remember, what did we say the fire department was?
There's 260 total, right?
Something. And with all the COLAs, I can't remember what that was off of, what was that, 50? I don't really, I'd have to go back and look. But I thought David said that we were going to need to come up with he was saying that I think he used a figure of 800,000 at one point, and then we had 300, so maybe we're going to be short, maybe 500. I'd have to go back and look. So I don't really know the numbers. I just know that, I know that we're going to be short. So I know a lot of things that I think our focus needs to be right away on is I don't want to not talk about the override at all, because yes, that's a wish list, but that's not something we can control. So we need to figure out what are we going to, exactly what to do. Now, I'm going to be meeting again at some point with the financial team there that they have with David, and I think we would go over, we're trying to come up with ideas.
Mm-hmm. So to back up really quick, that number that came from the schools,
Yeah.
essentially for what they need, that's pretty much half of this total amount. Have they discussed that already?
No,
And
no,
figured out?
no.
Okay, so it's possible that maybe something fell off in the budget that can absorb this cost.
Oh, yeah.
So Okay, so it might not be as
Well, one of
quite
the
as bad as
things,
380.
I said, and I did talk to Annie today too. I suggested, because the school's half of our budget,
Right.
right? You know, how are we going to get more school choice in? You know, is there any way of being creative here? Can we focus on getting more kids here by doing something great with the music program or the sports? Can we, you know, right now we co-op out with all the sports, right? So if we don't have a sport, we go out to the other schools and we pay a fee. Well, how about, you know, Hatfield is in the same boat as we are in many cases. They only got, our class size is about 50 kids per class size, which is hard when you're playing sports, right? And I know that kids aren't supposed to choice out because of sports, but they do. I mean, it's just, it happens. And if we could somehow make it where we're a little bit more competitive, I said, and I don't even know, I said, maybe can we pair up with Pioneer Valley, the immersion school? Can we do something with Hatfield School? Can we have a joint, I know we don't, it was through the town, at one point we looked at combining Hatfield and Hadley. All right, well, that didn't work out. No, the town people, neither side, I don't believe, wanted that, right? Hadley people don't want to go over the bridge to go to Hatfield, and Hatfield don't want to go to, but.
So when you say that we
how about-
contract out, do we still have our own sports teams that is just managed through, or do we join their teams? Like
We join their teams, like, we don't have,
We only choice out for sports that we cannot provide.
Right.
So swimming, we'll use an
Yes.
example. But if that town has more than enough already on their, they don't have to accept
Yes.
our children. And I thought, I could be wrong, that if kids went to other towns to do the sports, they're relied on their own transportation
Mhm.
and they pay the fees. I didn't get that the school paid the fees for them. I believe they don't.
we have to, the kids pay to go to those sports, I think. At
Right,
another
but it
school.
doesn't come out of the school budget.
No, the parents pay.
Exactly. So, and as far as the varsity sports and so forth, you're looking, kids can't choice out to another school to play varsity sport that we provide
Right.
because the MIAA rules
Mhm.
does not allow that to happen. So I don't see that where our sport, we're very fortunate in Hadley with the boosters clubs that our children are not paying for sport fees.
Mhm.
Other towns generate income to cover the bus trips and other things by charging parents fees for their kids to play sports. We have a booster club that provides quite a bit of money for the uniforms and towards our sport activities, so we haven't had to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see where our sports.
Well, I
will
was
be able
using
to-
it as an example, like
Right.
if we could offer something, and I know that they're not allowed to, but they could say what they want. They could say, you know, this school's gonna offer me more in other things. I mean,
Yeah, I take your point to be
they're not
by
gonna, they
offering
know
more.
that, people know that they can't do that, and so,
And then the school choice money goes into a fund that the school committee controls, not the
Right.
town.
right. But if
So-
if the school's taking less from us, because they are being able to come up with other ways of providing, them coming up with other ways, whether it be through grants, through more people coming in, through, we gotta be creative here. Somehow, we're short on money and,
Yeah.
And-
Well, they
Ultimately,
have
the
to be
more
creative.
the more kids that we
Right.
can keep in Hadley, the more money we can get. And one way of doing that is what I'm hearing is that by offering more sports, whether that's through working with Hatfield or something to keep the kids here,
Mhm.
rather than choicing out for the sports that we don't offer, is
Well-
how we get the kids here. To
and
make
that
more
was just
money
an
overall.
example and it's the school committee that will need to go through and come up,
Right.
be creative, and that was just something that I threw out there, but it's not necessarily, they could pick the foreign languages, they
So-
could pick something else.
Tom was the liaison to the school committee, right?
Mhm.
Did we have a replacement for him?
No.
It sounds like you already been
They
pretty close in
hold
contact, but
meetings that are not at reasonable times. So Tom could never make a meeting.
when are the meetings?
They're like early, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not you know, and I understand teachers work till 3 o'clock, you know,
Yeah.
and so forth, but it's not feasible for a lot of people to attend those. I watch them after the fact.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. I was watching them,
How
but
often do they meet?
they didn't seem to meet that often. At least I haven't seen it much on TV.
Right.
Unless,
Could be,
I don't
it'd
know
be good to have a
if
replacement liaison now that Tom's gone.
Excuse
If it's
Yeah,
it's like 5 o'clock, I
Right.
can be over the bridge in time. Well, not over the bridge, through Route 9 in time to do that, especially if it's not too often that they meet.
yeah.
But
the other thing is that in past history, the school has never, you know, I don't think you'll see them come in and say, okay, we can reduce our budget by $300,000. That's not the way it's gonna happen. And the population of our children going to schools here is much less than it has in years past, but our expenses keep going up. So I think within the school, they need to figure that out themselves.
Now, Annie
And then
did
we-
provide me all sorts of information about going to about what you're talking about with school. And I'm gonna pass that along to everyone. It's in my email. So I will send that. And it has to do, and I honestly didn't get a chance to even read it over. I thought I tried to print it just in case it came up. But it had to do with the school choice coming in and some of the rules, you know, all her information on those.
Okay, so, and as well, you know that when our kids in Town Hadley school choice out, that comes out of our general fund. It does not come out of the school's monies. Okay, so, but when kids come in, they get the school choice money. So you need to
Yep.
take that into consideration as well. And then also, let me just say, in the defense of the school, is that if you have a child that comes with special needs, and of course, no child is left behind, we have to provide extra services, which generates a cost too, which is not covered under your school choice funding. So that also could be an added expense to the town. So, like by opening it up and saying, okay, we want all these school choice children just to bring the funds in, you're also bringing on added expenses. It could be too, more expenses, and it's just
how often is that
costing
an
you more.
issue?
You should ask the school, but from my past knowledge, yeah, it's an issue.
So is it highly variable? Does it really change from year to year?
Mhm.
Okay.
In my opinion.
And that's just off the top of my head spitballing. but-
Looking at previous, sitting on the board previous.
So I'd imagine a lot of other small towns go through the same kind of thing, where it's one year you have this added expense, another year you don't. It just seems
Some
like.
towns don't even let you school choice in small towns.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think Hadley was one of the ones to hold out the longest.
Yeah, it just seems like it
The
might
other only small town would be Hatfield, you know, in my opinion, that I can think of. But again, the school stuff is their issue. They have to come to us and say, this is what we need or we don't need. And that's when we deal with it. Until then, there's really nothing that we can say to them. You know, they deal with their own budget.
But
Yeah,
at the same
but-
time, us staying informed of what they're going through, because like you said, it's
I agree with you.
But
then when the final number does come to us, we can have a little more knowledge on saying yes or no. I mean, it does come down to just saying yes or no, or maybe cutting it by an X amount, but the more informed we are, the better we can do that.
Yeah, and we have withheld money from the school before in hopes of free cash and giving it back, but from what I understand, we're trying not to rely on free cash, you cannot rely on that. You know, that's the other thing, you were sat on board with me when we did that, so.
now they will, you know, things will have to work. You know, they have a budget, we have a budget. If this is what it is, this is what it is. They'll have to figure out other ways. You know, I don't want to see classes, anything get cut either. I don't, but sometimes you have to, it's a puzzle. You're going to have to move things around. Now, I know that they're going to be having a new principal that they're going to have to deal with. You know, the other thing is, I see all these administrative costs. They're going to have to figure out maybe different delegations. I don't know what they'll do, but when you run a business, you know, and your numbers aren't there, you have to do something else to figure it out. And that's where I think that and we can't be the ones to figure it out for them. That's absolutely true. But we are the one that supplies the budget,
You could
and
say we're level funding it.
they will have to figure it out.
You need to figure it out.
But at the same time, it's the nice thing to do is to help with be creative. Like, let's go and all put our heads together. We'll help, and see if there's a way. We'll help give ideas. I mean, everybody be part of it. Maybe someone could come up with a creative idea on what to do.
No raises for a year. I
But
won't do that.
So do you want to stay tuned in for now? I doubt they're doing too much with the holiday break and everything. And then on our next agenda, we'll have the info on when they meet, how often and stuff, and we'll actually,
yeah, no,
I'll put it to
I'll
replacement.
keep up on the schools for right now.
Cool.
That's fine.
and then hopefully next meeting can appoint a new liaison.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the schools because they don't really. They haven't been meeting too much, and I have been informed enough right now, so I can keep up on it. I will pass along what she had just given me. It was like today after we met, then because I told her some of these ideas that I had, and she said, well, I will give you what I have for some information, and it had to do with school choicing in, school choicing out. I haven't had a chance to read any of it yet, but it's quite a bit, and I figured I'd just pass it along. Yeah, so we'll do that. So I think that is something to talk about afterwards because that's half the budget. The next thing is on our expense side, down the road we'll have to look at, is there anything that we can combine? And we've talked about this, and no one, and I listened to Molly say it. She said it a very nice way the other day. They're going to go to the department heads and say, come up. Nobody's going to offer to do it, but we have to strongly suggest on some things that people.
But still, I've always been hesitant on that, just because you can say combine, the services or combine two staff positions in one, but it still is ultimately a cut. In the same way that we're looking at right now, you can say David is kind of a combined town administrator and finance director because he has to do so much work on the budget. But obviously that's not enough. It is ultimately worse than having two people in that. So, if we need the money, we need the money. But as long as we're clear, we're not approaching it like there's needless redundancy here and we could do the exact same thing with one position. It's not really like that. You can cost save, but there will be a loss of services to some degree when you do that.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, at this point, what we have to do is we have to get it to balance. And that's that it'll be a tough job, but I think that we have to get it to balance. And then we can put our wish list in with an override, with everything, and make a good case on that. But the override, that's up to the town people. We can't control that, so what we can control is.
So I've been out of the loop a little bit. So has the select board agreed to move forward with an override?
They seem to be, a little bit, where they have different groups. They wanted I never heard them say no, that they did not want to do the override. They sounded like, okay, we'll have an HR group investigate, we'll have an IT investigate, we'll have to see how we're going to save money. They need a number. They need to see it makes sense. And I feel like they just aren't, they don't have enough information already to say yes to it, but I don't see the door shut.
So moving forward, yes, as in it'll be on the warrant and it's an ongoing topic. Whether they support it at this point,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
What about their tax rates? What have they done to further looking into the split tax rate?
Well, we did have a lot of conversation about that, and the assessor had a presentation on kind of the breakdown of everything, a recommendation. They decided, select board decided to not adjust. So it's not splitting it, not split the tax
Yeah,
rate.
but as of right now, that's not for next,
Yeah, it's a decision made every year, so.
made every year.
Doesn't really change
But
your mind.
if
But you're going into a 19 budget.
when they go to the budget, at that point, there's gonna be more discussion, my understanding is, on the split tax rate going into the budget, because if they decide to go forward with the override, they will then be, at that point, almost looking at promising the town that they'll do the split tax rate.
Yeah, it was just a matter of do you do it beforehand and say, look, because we split the tax rate, there's some room now? Or do you wait to do it and say, we promise we'll do a split tax rate if you do the override? It's just kind of a process.
Now, it's not going to be easy with that split tax rate because there's a lot of people against it. The assessors are against it, the planning board's against it. There's a lot against it.
There's, there are towns who have done that split tax rate, and they've been sued by their big box stores, and the big box stores got their values reassessed, and the town is now taking in millions less than they were before they split.
So
the tax.
that's where your assessor needs to make sure that the buildings are being assessed at the right value. So that doesn't happen, correct?
Well, I think his point was that big box stores have a lot of budget for legal, offense, and that, we don't have that kind of a budget. And so we're taking a big risk that we're going to actually end up worse off tax-wise if we do this.
So the way I see it is that there's the select board, so that's fine if they choose not to go that way, but they seriously need to sit down, and you want to present a budget with an override, but you need to have a plan in effect, and that starts with your select board and on the funding. Our debt keeps increasing. Our funding is not increasing as the same level as our debt, and eventually, this is what's happening. 2019, it's going to be very hard to balance a budget. It's only going to get worse with your operating expenses. When these new buildings kick in, the operating budget is going to be, I can't even imagine what it's going to look like. So we can sit here and discuss and work towards it and so forth, but in my opinion, if the select board is not committed to, it's them. If, they're not committed to really seriously finding a way to change their income and their funding, or you have to tell people we're just going to make cuts, and that's the way it's going to be. We don't have any more money coming in. You can't rely on something that is unsure, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
So,
I think that will happen. The select board's been a little slow putting together the budget for next year and setting the priorities or giving the marching orders, as it were, and trying to think ahead, whether it was with the split tax rate or with the potential override. But one way or the other, we're going to have a balanced budget come the next year, through their work and through our work. There's a lot more work that should be done to be able to anticipate what you could use an override for and how to do that, which I don't think they are going to do. That's what falls on us, right? But I know Tom was really pushing for this, but I'd always never wanted to get into the weeds building a budget. That's the select board's responsibility with David and department heads. So I think we should spend more of our time thinking about the override, how to pitch this, and honing those numbers when the time comes, because that's what's not going to happen with the select board, right?
So we represent the residents of this town. So going into a town meeting when the finance committee and the select board see things differently, like last time, is not really a good method of how you do things.
No, but there's...
And that's kind of where I sense that this still is. If I'm wrong, you can tell me. I'm okay with it.
Well, there's a way to pitch that, right? So when you go for an override, we could go for a couple $1 million in this huge thing with all these, positions and capital items or whatever you want. The other way to do it, which I'm recommending, is you go small and you say, if you're looking at IT, like we've talked about, start with the $200,000. Just to get for startup costs and for one, potentially 2 staff members for a core, a finance position, and HR director. That's it. That's what you go for. And then public safety if we can't fit that into the budget. The way we pitch it, even if we're not on the same page, is, hey, look, it's been years now and the finance committee cannot agree with the select board. There's been confusion. We don't have the numbers straight until the last minute. This is why you need a finance director. We're pushing an override only so far as to get us the staff to then evaluate the budget in ways that we can't, right? Because the HR, we've been talking about like renegotiating contracts and doing the staff evaluation. But an HR director is needed for that. So that's how we pitch it to the town meeting, right? It's like, yeah, we're not agreeing, and that's why we need these professional staff support.
So I get that, and I agree for the override for all those things, and blah, blah, blah. But that's the override to carry those things, so our hope is that once we get a financial person in here, they'll figure out how to come up with the other 800,000 that we're short before we get these people.
So my thinking
Right?
is though, we're jumping the gun. We keep saying override, and I'm in disagreement with you in this particular case. I don't feel that we should spend all our time focused on the override. I think that that's what the small group meetings were supposed to be about. I think that the IT and the HR and the finance director was supposed to, and then come back and you say, we need an IT, and when you pitch the override, because it's going to, you know, we're going to save money here, we're going to save money there. These are, you had great reasons why, and all those reasons is the pitch. But I think we need to focus on just what we have. I think that's our wish list. I think that would move us ahead. I think that will actually save us money in the long run, but that's not something we can do right now. I think that what we have to just balance what's in front of us somehow.
I get what he's saying, and I kind of agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is ever going to change. It's always going to be put off, and put off. We represent the people here, and so we speak for, we don't have to agree with the select board, but here is what we feel is best for the town, and it's going to help us for this year and for future years to figure out, this town's growing. I'm a firm believer that change of government's got to happen here.
Sure, I agree with that.
Okay?
Yeah.
David shouldn't
But-
focus on 100 things and not be able to focus on just one or two things and make those things happen. I think and it proved that the residents look to us for answers because of the last meeting, just the way it turned out.
Right.
Okay?
But what happens when the thing is that I think I agree with exactly what you're saying, but that's what the pitch is when you go to the town meeting.
well, what if in our
What
pitch-
happens when they say no?
What if,
Then when they say no and we have to start cutting, then they say no.
But that you want to cut, you want to do it then. Look at the cuts.
We're going to go to, sorry.
what I wanted to say is, I think that maybe what we should do is we should figure out where all these cuts are gonna be, and we present it to them. So if we don't have an override, this is gonna get cut, that's gonna get cut, this is gonna get cut, and that's gonna get cut.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Because,
that's right,
well-
and then let them decide, do they want all those things to get cut or no?
But we still have to provide these new positions to be able, so are we gonna, if we don't get an override, are we gonna cut everywhere else to provide these new positions? Because of the fact is that we need this.
I think so. I
Yeah,
think
that's-
that's part of the pitch.
That's part of my pitch too.
Yeah, but, and to Amy's point, I think we had a little backwards last year in that it's department heads and then David and then the select board's responsibility to come up with the balanced budget.
Mhm.
Now, finance committee is supposed to support that. We're supposed to help that, and we're, in a way, the final say because we present the budget to town meeting.
Mhm.
But I don't think the select board should be giving us the task of finding where the cuts are. That's their job, right?
I
So
agree with that
we
too.
are going to go to town meeting with a balanced budget. We are going to go there and say, even if you don't vote in this override, we have what we need, you know, to get through the next year. That's going to happen, but we shouldn't be doing all the legwork when,
Well, I agree with that. That's normally the way it goes, right? But I've been at these select board meetings. That doesn't look like the way it's going to me. It looks like the way it's going to me is they're saying, here, finance committee, balance the budget. That's what they've been doing to us. They've been giving it to us to
They're
balance.
supposed to give us a budget,
But this is between us and them again. This is where we're gonna have the trouble again.
but they create that problem.
It's like
It will
whose
be-
job is what?
and I think it'll come to a back and forth, right? So they're going to put they're going to put a budget in front of us that they get from the department heads and that David's done some preliminary work on. And it probably won't be balanced at first, right? Then we're going to make some broad suggestions and send it back to the select board.
Mhm.
That's what I think we do.
Right,
We don't just say, okay, we've got it now and we'll work on it until town meeting,
right.
right? We send it back to them consistently and tell them, here's what we recommend, you make the cuts, you
That's right.
find the money, right?
Mhm.
And there was a little of that kind of starting last year, but it was very much of an expectation that the finance committee would find the money. not make the recommendations.
Yeah, that was the only way we got it through, was we
Right.
sat down at that one meeting down in David's office and we found the money, and that's what we ended up doing. But that's
No,
because,
we didn't find the money, we didn't agree with them.
no, we did.
Well, we found the money, but they didn't agree with the
Us.
cuts that
Right.
we found.
Right.
Okay.
And-
So I agree, that's,
Right, and if
That's the
they,
way it should be.
so when they bring us the budget is when we start working on it,
exactly.
not spinning wheels until then.
So the other part is that, so you mentioned that there's these subgroups working on IT, HR individually.
Yeah.
And that's true, but I think there's another piece to the pitch that we need to focus on as a finance committee, which is the overall history and the explanation, right? So when town meeting happens, I'll be able to get up there and say, here's why we need IT,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, for all the reasons like we're outdated, it'll help our, you know, efficiency, it'll like be supportive in all these ways. Great, fine.
Mm-hmm.
But when people say, well, I don't want an override, we've never had an override, why should we have an override now? What happened? That's not IT specific.
Right.
And that's a broad conversation that all of finance committee needs to be educated on so that any one of us can get up there when we're talking about our respective issues, you know, HR, IT, finance, and public safety, and be able to answer that question, as well as go out into the community and, you know, public forums ahead of time, stuff like that. When we started the budget, we were going through line by line. The first thing we were all asking was like, well, what were the last 5 years looking like? Why is it like this now? But have we done that education of, you know, why hasn't Prop 2.5 kept up with our needs? What's been changing with the schools for the last 10 years that it's such a pain now? Like, that's the broader conversation I think we need to have as a finance committee so that we can make the overall pitch for an override. Because it's not just like we need IT and IT's important. That's true, but they'll just tell us, we'll go find the money for it then. We need to explain broadly why there's no more money left to find year after
But
year.
if you look at, if you take just even a couple of years, if you even just go back like 3 years or something, and you look at what the budget is, and you look at what they're spending now, it's amazing at the increases, at the certain, you know, what they're doing. And what happens is, in many cases, someone gets a grant for something, and then they have to continue funding it once the grant runs out. Or they need it for one project, you know, maybe this year we're gonna need something for this project going on. Well, then they keep it in their budget every year after that.
And the money has to come from somewhere else to keep funding it.
Does
Yeah.
Town Hadley have a grant writer?
I don't know.
This is another point of the government has to change. Because if David was freed up a little bit more, he might be able to go out and research grants as well and apply for grants.
Mhm.
And as far as I know, unless it's brought to the attention, it's not seeked out. So again, this is where I feel that our makeup of how it works in this building needs to change.
I mean, the town, the way the government's run is huge. I think I completely agree with that. And I think you would see it run much smoother that way. And you would save a ton of money. And you would be able to share services. Like, and sharing part of this IT with the school's IT that they've already been doing.
Yeah.
You know?
So I think, what we should put on the next agenda are points of conversation about the history of our finances that we should be caught up on by the time town meeting rolls around, right? So, example off the top of my head is our capital spending. So I think we mentioned this at a previous meeting, but stuff like, you know, bullets for the police department are no longer in the operating budget, but they're being put in as one-time capital requests, which are overrides. They are overrides that are happening on just a one-time override, but it's happening year over year. It's a one-time override because it's been pulled out of operating budgets because as expenses go up elsewhere, we need to find the money from somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a great broader point that we should understand as a finance committee. And just one example.
That's a good example.
The stuff that's been happening financially with the town, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we understand state funding and, you know, what we get from the state in terms of support for the last 10 years, 5 years? Has that gone up, down, stayed the same? You know, topics like that, and I can come up with 3 or 4 so we have it on our next agenda. When we're pitching an override, that's the kind of knowledge that we need to have as a committee. And it'll just, moving forward, that's going to help us when we're talking about capital planning, when we're talking about budgeting items, when we can see the broader trends and understand how all this stuff works, right? And there's a lot of literature out there that we had passed around, but we never actually sat down and just talked about it and gone over the history of it all. We originally did that with David, but it's been a while. So that's where I think, especially while we're waiting between when the select board gets us the budget, right? They send us the budget, we kind of go over, send it back to them, and then while they have it, that's when we keep educating ourselves as a finance committee with preparation for the override that's coming.
I love that idea.
I do as well.
All right, so I think that's how we move forward and
I agree with you.
find some way to clearly communicate that process with the select board too, whether it's just showing up to the meeting, kind of explaining all this again, but really emphasizing that they need to take the lead on doing the cuts and that we're here to review and support and recommend. Because that was not made clear last year. So.
No.
It's
They looked to us to do it. They said, what's your plan?
Yeah, and it's one thing if they
I think
say...
Dave, I think that Donald even came right out and said it, right? Didn't he came right out and tell us?
And it's one thing if they say, you do it, and then it's like, fine, we'll do it, and you'll agree to what we say. But
they
they tasked us to do it, and then wouldn't agree or support
Right.
what we suggested.
Right.
So yeah, if they're going to want to have the say on it, then they do the work, and we'll review, support, and recommend. And that's the kind of thing we should have kind of been able to talk through at the sit down between the boards, but there was a lot going on there. So.
Yeah.
Other stuff on the agenda.
So
I don't have it in front of me.
Well, it was pretty much just the budget that's on the agenda. I believe that's all I listed was revenues and the budget. And we just talked about the revenues, here it is. And we did the IT upgrades, and we hit on the expenses a little bit. I'm not sure how we're gonna handle this year meeting with the department heads yet. I haven't been clear on that, how we're gonna handle that. Whether they meet with just us, whether we just do it with the select board, or how that's
So I was thinking of a good middle ground between, 'cause me and Tom were on opposite ends of it. With the select board support, if we can have a finance committee member there when they meet with the select board, and not just there in the audience, like in the back corner, but there as in like actively participating in vetting the person. So, Marlo shows up from DPW, is presenting his budget, there'll be the select board as well as a finance committee member there who's able to ask questions and maybe be sitting at the front table even, if something like that is possible. I don't know how it works.
I kind of like the idea that they have to come see us separately.
For the sake of just time though and redundancy.
I get that, but
The reaction that they get from the select board is different than the reaction they get with us.
that's right.
I think
That's kind of what I'm saying. Oh, you want this? Well, let's put it on your list.
But so as in terms of a process, right? As your department head, you should go to the select board, present your budget, and hash it out with them. The select board brings that budget to us. We review it, vet it, and say, I don't like this, send it back. The select board either reworks it or calls in Marlo, right? But if you're a department head and we go through this process, you go to the select board's doing work on it, you take it to the finance committee's doing work on it, and then we have to talk with the select board to reconcile that, or what number is actually being worked on at any given point, right? So it just gets messy, I think, when you're having a department head come to two different, and a little last year that kind of contributed to the mix-up of responsibilities, right? But this makes a very clear chain of command and then a process for going back and forth.
Right. So let me just give you an example of this draft here. I'm looking at Public Works. And it's looking to absorb the cemeteries in Seturca Park, which I had brought up Seturca Park in the past anyways, or cemeteries. And it talks to you about how it needs more staffing, but it doesn't tell you the monies that's coming from these two things already. That, so I'm saying, so when I would be saying to them, okay, you're telling me what you need, but tell me what you're bringing to the DPW from these departments that are currently running by, not departments, but like, for instance, cemeteries. it's done by volunteers and stuff, and there's money set aside for outside mowing and things like that. So, you know, I would also just want to see when they're giving us these things, well, where's the funding? What funding comes with it, type thing is what I'm trying to say. So that's what I would say to David. Well, you're giving us all these requests. Tell us what fundings comes with it, so we have like a dollar amount.
But that's the work the select board should be doing,
I get that.
is managing the department heads to make sure that the requests either come with a funding strategy, or if they can't, then the select board comes up with that funding strategy.
Well, the thing about this is in the public works is I watched this meeting, and, you know, Marlo didn't come up with, he was told that these things are going to him. So, you know, he also should be informed does it come with any type of money that's set aside already for these things. And I can tell you, there's nothing for Sturka Park, unless it comes from Park and Rec, which there's nothing there, but money's for a coordinator or whatever they are, whatever the, you know, for payroll.
Yeah, but so a way to think about this again too is, so when Marlo says I need X, he has the first option to say, but hey, I can cut from here in my budget to fund that, right? And ideally he'll cut from what he thinks is best to cut. He'll have that first choice. If he can't think of anything or refuses to, he goes to David when he's presenting his budget. But David says, here's where I'd recommend you cut. If David can't find anything or doesn't want to find anything, nobody wants to be the bad guy cutting stuff, it goes to the select board. And then it's the select board's responsibility to say, Marlo, if you want this, we're going to have to cut somewhere, and here's where we're going to do it. If the select board refuses to, or doesn't want to, or can't, then it comes to the finance committee, right? I think that's the chain that it gets bumped up.
Yep.
And ultimately, you don't want, as a department head, the finance committee, who is the least connected to your department on a day-to-day basis, coming in and cutting your budget. You know, you'd want it to be yourself, or maybe David, because he works with, you know, so that's the progression of it, right? So I don't want to kind of short-circuit that by having department heads directly meeting with us before they've had a chance to hash it out with David or go to the select board. Does that make sense?
It does, in a way. But I agree that coming to us, I agree with what you're saying, but they would already have had this done. And so when they're coming to us, they've already done this job, this task, where we would be at the very end.
Okay.
So we would want to know, you know, because we need them to balance. We're gonna, this is your budget, and you're gonna have to figure it out ahead. You know, they're gonna have to balance it ahead of time. And then if they can't, and they're gonna be coming up, then we would want to hear it. You know?
Didn't we talk about telling each budget that they had to have level funding? So they already know what amount they have to work with?
It's been very clear that everybody knows that this is going to be very, very tight. We don't have, every department knows this.
Right,
It's
but I don't
not
think
really
that's
level
been
funding either, though, because you're already short 800,000. So how can you level
Right.
fund something?
right.
You can't.
And I don't think that's been perfectly communicated from the select board down to the department heads that that's happening. I mean, there's a general understanding that like money's tight. It's not like anyone's getting a huge bump.
No, but the thing is, you got to be, and that's the problem. Is it needs to be. This is serious, and we need to balance. I don't want to. We're not. I agree that we shouldn't be the one deciding which line items go, but I think we need to be strongly suggesting you need to do something. And if you can't do it, then it's just going to happen. So we want you to figure it out. We want them to figure it
But
out.
that's going back down the chain. That's what we tell the select board.
Mhm.
That's exactly what the select board should be telling David. And
then-
that's exactly what David should be telling Marlo.
Sure.
Is that if you don't balance your budget, I will do it for you.
Right.
That's what she. So
So here's
That's-
David, who brings his, because the select board says, David, we want a balanced budget. It's not the select board does it, David does it, right? Reality, it
Yeah,
is. Okay, here is David's budget. Well, I need $800,000 of free cash. It happens every year.
And then-
So, and then the select board says, take it back, David, figure it out. You know, so I'm just hoping that they are going to be very involved with David and helping David come up with a budget that will suit the town. So, you know, there again, David's got a lot of work on his plate, and this is therefore why we need all these services.
right.
because one person can't do everything, and I can tell you right now, if I had to do all that he does, it's not everything's getting 100% of his attention. You know, it's always here, there, you know what I'm saying? It's not.
And there are some things, so let's just learn from last year, right? So OPEB, and we decided to push off that funding for a year. You know, that's a broader financial thing that the Finance Committee can lead and champion. But there were other cases where it was like, well, if we cut non-essential services, you know, we keep saying that, like, do we pull from library, do we pull from Parks and Rec? That's what the select board needs to be doing. And I was saying that then, it's like, that's not what Finance Committee should be deciding on.
No,
But
I
they
agree
don't
with
want-
you, but they weren't deciding, so what do you do?
Yeah,
then?
They don't
We
want-
had to do it.
The problem is, no, they don't want. They don't want to be the bad guy.
Right.
Nobody wants to be the bad
guess
guy.
what? These people voted them in to make decisions, not to keep going. And I hear it multiple times again and again. Let the people decide. Let the people decide. Well, when I voted for you, you need to come up with a recommendation. Your word is on the behalf of what I voted for you to do. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's with them.
Well, the only person I mean for is department heads that I've ever heard that really, you know, you push, and that they would give back really more was the fire department for the longest time, and it wasn't recent. It was before. They were like, okay, well, this is what we would do if we don't get it. Yep, we'll manage this way. Well, we'll figure this out. Well, we'll figure that out, and that's why they kept getting pushed back until it just blew up, right? Until we had to do it.
Right.
But the fire department over and over again let it, you know, figured out another way.
Right. And that's the kind of stuff we should be keeping an eye on. That's the kind of stuff we should be talking about, not spending all of our time building budgets from scratch with department heads or just going through line by line and revising, but like keeping an eye out for which department and educating ourselves on which departments have been doing that. And fire is what we jumped on last year.
But I'm
right?
just
But-
saying, like, some departments will give and figure out a way, and others just
Well,
won't.
I can tell you right now that that fire department should have never been doing that because there's rules and regulations and laws. And the select board should have been the first one to jump on that and say, no, we need to figure this out and get this done. Just so we could
Yeah, I mean, I don't
be
think we were
up to
ever-
code. I don't think we were ever that off, but it happened.
Yeah.
So,
But I'm just saying, I think that we need just to show that that this is a serious thing, and David needs to really go and get a balanced budget.
Yeah. And that's what we communicate to the select board. I think that's all it comes down to, is either whether it's a joint meeting again or attending their meeting and just communicating all of this is what we should do. We shouldn't do the work ourselves.
okay, so just to prepare,
Mhm.
what I would say is that in the end, if they come back and this is whatever they come up with and we don't agree with it, then we still have to come up with our own budget anyways. Because then we're back in the same seat as we were before, you know? So ultimately, we have to stay focused on that. We are here and speak for the residents. So,
Yeah, we'll do that every time they put something else in front of us, right?
Right.
That's the eye that we're taking to it.
right, because I'll be honest with you, if you stand up there and you say why we need an HR and IT and blah, 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 if you give these people the information, they absorb that, they will help. They will do it. If you explain to them why and give them a reason what's going to happen, how it's going to save us down the road, and give them numbers. And they will respond just like they did for us before, you know. So I'm thinking that even if the select board is not on path with that override thing, but we are, you know, I think we got to have that all put together too.
Exactly.
Just in case.
Right. And we
Right.
need that broader information for that. You know, one of the first things they could ask is, well, Hatfield doesn't have a finance director. How are they getting along okay?
Mhm.
Well, do we know off the top of our heads how big Hatfield is, what their annual budget is, you know, what their staff looks like, so that we can compare ourselves? Like,
I'll get you that information.
that's the kind of stuff we should be doing in finance committees. Just like when, you know, the assessor came in, and when we were first talking about, you know, the splitting the tax rate, we were just spitballing and kind of going from nothing, but he came in, gave a solid presentation. We had all the numbers in front of us, and we understood what we were doing. And we made a decision. Well, the select board made a decision, and we were all,
I get that, but also you have to, here we are relying on our assessor to give us the best, what he thinks is the best for this town. When still we should be going to the other towns and saying, is this the way it's done here? How does it work? So we're relying on that, our one person
right,
to make that decision for
exactly.
us.
That's the stuff the finance committee should be doing.
That's right. So, and I agree with you.
Cool.
So I get your part where, we can get Hatfield's budget. We can get they're all,
It's all public record, obviously.
public record, you know what I'm saying? But like the assessor thing, he's very knowledgeable and I get that, but he should be trying to figure out, we should be asking him, how do you think we can make it more work for, generate more money? Not, don't do this, don't do that. Well, don't do that. Well, what way do you think we could come up with it?
Right, and that's the broader level strategy stuff in finance that we should be working with him directly on and spending our time at on
Exactly.
the meetings.
Did anybody ask him that at those meetings?
The assessor?
Yeah. No, we just took his word and said, okay, we're not gonna do it.
Well, and planning board also recommended against it, and finance committee was
Right,
Yeah,
which
but
is
yeah.
fine, which is fine. But turn it around on them and say, well, what is your suggestion? You're taking one person's,
Yeah, I agree.
turn it around on them. How can you help us figure out how we can generate more revenue in this town? And see what he says. That's my question to him. And I'll email him and ask him,
Yeah.
And it doesn't hurt to ask. That's what I was always told as a kid. You might not like the answer, but it never hurts to ask.
Yeah, and if there's anything promising, we can bring him into a finance committee meeting and hash it out.
Exactly. So I agree with you on certain things that we need to focus on and work on, and other things that we can't, such as the budget, until the select board figures it out between themselves and David, and then see if we agree with it.
Yeah, and as soon as we have those in front of us, we'll do a passover, we'll look at thoroughly and send it
Right.
back to the select board with
Well,
clear
I also
understanding.
think when David goes to the department heads, besides for him telling them about the expenses, I think he's gonna plan on going to them and asking them about more about their revenues.
Yeah, because and we've pushed that a lot and made that a priority. We say revenues, revenues, revenues. So it's been communicated to the select board and David, and he passes that down to department heads now. Because all last year we were shouting that.
I just want to give you, I am the liaison to the DPW, and I have talked to Marla. We talk quite often on the phone. And so, like for instance, knew about the Circle Park and the cemeteries. I really can't say anything about the cemeteries because it's my husband's company that actually mows them, so I would have to remove myself from that situation. But what I did say to him is I was looking at fees that he, I gave him, looking at his fee schedule, what he charges for certain things. I'll use trench permit for an example. And if you don't know what a trench permit is, I'll tell you. When somebody needs to build a house or dig in the ground, okay? Dig in the ground, the town has to go out and dig safe. Dig safe tells you if there's telephone wires, cable wires, blah, blah, blah. The town says there's a sewer wire, there's sewer pipes here, water pipes, blah, blah, blah. So that takes personnel to go out and do it, research where the pipes are underground. Okay, so you got to go find the paperwork to say where is it if you don't know, and you got to mark these things. So I said, what do you get charged? What do you charge for that? And he told me, I can't remember exactly, it's not much. It maybe $75, $100, don't quote me on it, it's low, okay? And Hadley's growing, and you have a lot of businesses and things that dig, and I said, okay, I'm going to give you an example. Northampton, though it's very large, it doesn't matter, it's the same scale. They're building over there, you got to dig in the ground. Charges $250 every time one of our guys goes out there. So what I said to him is, the way I look at it is if you came to me and said, well, this is where I'm going to make some changes to see if we can generate more income for our department, such as looking at all our fees and such as what he should be doing, and I'm gonna bring in money this way, but I need money for Saturka Park. Now, I would look at him and say, hey, that is great. You're looking for ways to bring more money into your department to help yourself. We are gonna match you that to help you deal with this. Because I see he's working at it. You know what I mean? And so that's the discussion that him and I had. And don't use my numbers for exact, but those are the things. Because I look at it as police, fire, and DPW are our essential departments. It's hard for me to go and say, here's your budget, which a lot of these are bare bones. You make cuts to tell me where you're going to be able to pick up this other stuff. And in those departments, it's not easy to do when they're at the bare minimum. Now, DPW, they could give money back. We were looking at, well, where is this $800,000, whatever, that free cash? They could give money back, but it all depends on your weather. But we also have to look at its infrastructure in this town. You have pipes here that are so old. Sewer, water, wherever. If we have a major collapse or break, this town is not set up for any, we don't have any funding for that. And it could cost lots of dollars to do that. And so when I look at the DPW, I say to myself, well, we put money aside for OPEB and all kinds of other things, but we don't put money aside for infrastructure. And that's important as well. And we need to somehow, or the select board does, incorporate that into our budget. Because God forbid, if something happens major, we don't have the funds to do it, and we should be thinking about that.
I think ultimately that's stabilization.
That's what I was going to say, but we
But
don't
to your
want to.
point,
There's
yeah,
not
we should
enough in there, I can tell you that.
But maybe, and I know that they're very firm about not putting any more money into stabilization here. So why does it have to be called the money that we want to put in? Let's put it into something else. Maybe it's not stabilization. Maybe it's an infrastructure account.
Well, yeah.
Right?
But my point is, like, if my car was starting to rattle, I wouldn't start saving money for when it eventually breaks. I would use that money to fix the rattling, right? So
They
in the same
don't
way,
have money to fix
so that's
the
what I'm saying.
rattles
If we're
here.
gonna try and make a case that we should be saving money or adding something to the budget to start saving for when the infrastructure breaks, we should rather use that money to start fixing the infrastructure more proactively, right?
Granted. So my idea with the DPW budget is, so say if they have $800,000, I'm stuck on that figure, $800,000 for snow and ice, right? Easy winter, didn't spend a lot on salt, didn't spend a lot of gas, they have $70,000 they're going to turn back in. I would take that money and rather than sticking it back into the general fund, stick it aside for those future, infrastructure issues that you're going to have.
I like that idea.
That's where I'm at with that. So don't send it back into the general fund. Because at some point, that department is going to need it. And that's what I'm saying when it comes to the DPW.
And to add to
And it
that,
should be only used for infrastructure.
right? So I was going
issues.
to say, just to add to that, put in just a temporary capital account that's looking to the next year to use it actively for upgrading something, not just sitting around, but with an actual plan to use it within the next fiscal year.
Right.
Right. If we can do that, that's great. But part of the problem is we always
You
are relying
can't
so much
rely
on that
on
money.
always have to
Right, you
bring it
can't
back in.
rely
You
on that.
need
And
it so
this
much
is what
'cause
I'm
we're so
saying.
tight.
You need to start. That's why the select board needs to figure out how we're going to generate more income. And then you got the marijuana tax, which nobody in the world has figured out yet, right?
Well.
Is that supposed to happen January 1?
Yeah, but that's even if we have something here. For
Well,
sure. I know that they
Rafters,
talked
is that
about
Amherst or Hadley?
Rafters is
Hadley.
Well, that's where they want to put a dispensary.
at Rafters?
Yeah.
It's Amherst.
Is that Amherst or Hadley?
It might be Amherst. Yeah, over in Amherst, I forget
We're
at town
gonna
meeting,
pull from
I
that.
think they restricted to 6 or something dispensaries total, retailers.
Yeah.
But I know that there's 4 already planned medical marijuana. There were already 4 medical marijuanas dispensaries on the docket, so they have the first right to
Okay.
be now the retailers
Yep.
of the recreational marijuana.
Mhm.
So there's already like a guaranteed, basically 4 that are going to be going
Okay.
in Amherst.
In Amherst.
In Amherst.
Mm.
Are we
So-
gonna be able to,
We get nothing out of that, right?
No. But last I remember, there was talk between Northampton, Hadley, and Amherst, and this was a while ago, about doing that moratorium to push it back a year, and we would all agree.
Right.
Because, you know, obviously if Hadley's has marijuana, but Amherst decided to do a moratorium, wouldn't do anything, because you could just go to Hadley and buy it. But I think those talks just kind of fell off.
but not only that, with the distribution of anybody being able to get that, you bring on, especially we're a college town here,
Oh, yeah.
you bring on police more. I mean, you don't know what the result
Yeah.
of
No,
having
that's-
that's going to happen. You know what's going to happen.
Well, I was listening to the planning board, and one of the people were saying that you know, you don't. People already can get it. It's not like
They can grow it
Oh,
themselves.
they can get it
Northampton
themselves.
already has a dispensary, and has it impacted their police and fire needs?
I have no idea, but I know they don't know how to test for it, like you do for alcohol when you stop somebody.
So-
So there's going to be a lot of things.
So a lot of
that
this we
take
can
effect.
be caught up on by David. So I think we should put in, actually, recreational marijuana, I think should be put on the next agenda,
Okay.
just for a brief thing. Because, and again, that's the kind of work the Finance Committee should be doing, is figuring out what are the actual costs the other towns have had with the medical marijuana.
Right.
What are the plans with Northampton and Amherst, and
Mhm.
them being the college towns, how much is that going to impact Hadley?
Mhm.
How many retailers of our own do we have in the works
Mhm.
that we're going to be getting revenue from?
You know,
And
I think we could
all
send
that
the
stuff.
police department, we could ask our chief, can you contact the area towns that already have those and find out what their increase of, you know, workforce calls and so forth, and how will it affect Hadley if it's allowed right over on the Amherst thing?
Right,
So
and as
you
we're in the
look at
middle
those
of
things.
negotiations with the ambulance stuff and
Mhm.
with UMass, you know, both
Exactly.
of Amherst and with UMass in terms of what they give us.
Right,
Well, if recreational marijuana goes into effect and a lot of the UMass kids are going to be the ones smoking it, it
right.
might be somewhat of a case to ask for a little more money from
Right,
UMass.
but if they do that year thing, which is something we need to ask David, it gives us more time.
No, I don't think that didn't happen. That didn't happen. Like the talks fell off at some point, so there's just
Oh.
nobody's talking about a moratorium anymore.
Okay.
I don't know if they had actually decided that we're not going to do it or if they just stopped talking.
Okay.
It kind of seemed like they just stopped talking.
Because first
All of a
year's
sudden,
right
it
around
stopped.
the corner, so
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing.
It was being talked about a lot, and then all of a sudden it just wasn't talked about anymore.
Right.
So something happened. But
So-
all right, so that'll be on the agenda for the next.
All right, that's good, sorry.
So,
You know, as far as the school thing, you know, again, all the budget thing, let them figure out their budget and keep in touch with them, and then, you know, they know what they need to do, and then they just come to the select board, and if we agree or not agree, or if we have a problem and we need to make the cuts, then, you know, it's not up to us to do it. You know, but I have to say that you know, as far as the sports end of it, or in a lot of it, our parents in this town step up to the plate. Anytime somebody is selling something to benefit our schools and raise money to help better our, you know, classrooms for our kids, and that, you know, I have to say that we've always, in this town, have stepped up to the plate for our schools. And so I kind of feel like the school will do what's right as far as their budget and figuring out what they need to do to make things continually, you know, happen. And if they need to find resources somewhere else, I mean, they're great at fundraising. So
oh yeah.
I put 3 kids through all these schools, and you know, I generated a lot of money. Just
Well, they're
on
doing so
sales.
much with these new, you know, they got these new fields coming. It's going to be a big
Well,
deal.
that's another thing. They need to look at, oh, well, we have a track team now, right? And other towns might not have it.
We don't have, we have cross country.
Oh, cross country? Okay. So still, they're going to benefit from this new field, aren't they? Is there going to be a track on it?
No.
No? What's going to be on the field?
There's going to be a walk. You can walk around it, but it's not going to be a track.
Okay.
It's just going to be more soccer and more softball, baseball.
So just plain fields.
Just the fields. Soccer, baseball, and that's it.
What about putting up a little building for concessions?
Well, that could be a possibility, kind of like a pavilion that they just did put in, that they're looking with CPA money to put in for the elementary school. Maybe they could do the same thing, something with CPA money for that too. But at this point, right now, they're just doing the fields, and a lot of the theory was, right now they have to, because,
Can any CPA money be used for, like, we need upgrading for IT and stuff like that in this building? Is there any way?
no, you have to, it has to be.
This is an historical building.
Yeah, but you have, you can't do it for stuff like that. I mean, even they're even having trouble pushing it through for painting the building right now, because the CPA is saying it's maintenance. I don't really know, they're looking into it a little bit more. But I know that.
How about CPA siding it?
Well, I would not think they'd be able to cite it, and that's just my thinking, because that would take away the historic part of it. Just for the fact is, when they were granted, the town was granted money from CPA for doing stuff with this, for town hall, the front door, because they chose not to put in the historic door that they were supposed to put in, they did a better, the front door was more of a
Fire door or something?
whatever it was
Safety?
it's more of a safety, or it was a beneficial
And that look?
it didn't have the look, or didn't have the right material, whatever it was, but it didn't qualify.
Right,
So they couldn't get the CPA money because it didn't qualify, the door.
right.
Even though it's a historic building, that wasn't. It wouldn't, the door, they had to give the money back.
So I think that, should we, with all your suggestions, should we have David put a letter together to the select board, letting them know this is what we are looking for from them, and this is what we'll be working on until we, so they have an idea of what our plans are.
Yeah, you
What
better
we're
yet, we
gonna
should-
do and not do,
Yeah,
basically.
better yet, we should draft that ourselves.
Okay, exactly.
Um,
Well, yeah, and then give it to David and send it to him.
Yeah, or email or whatever.
Right, so, I mean, that way there's get a heads up of what we're willing to work on and what we're gonna be doing.
Yeah, let me.
What do you think about that? Do you
I
agree
really
with
like
that?
that.
Yeah,
And, I mean, well, first, does anyone volunteer to write that?
yeah, you do.
Yeah, but no, I do want
I'm
input.
happy to help. I don't feel like I can do it myself alone, but I'm happy to help with it if someone wants to
Okay.
do it.
I think that
So
if you can write it and then send it to us to individually
Mhm.
give our little input, but don't hit reply all, because we cannot,
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah, so there's two ways I can see we can do this. I can draft something, briefly run it by David in terms of like, is something I'm saying like just wrong, you know, in terms of that's not what finance committee does.
mhm,
After that check, I can get feedback from you guys,
mhm.
and then draft 2 will be sent to the select board. Other way we can do it is we can just have these laid out and talk about it at our next finance committee meeting, if you feel like we don't have a clear understanding yet of what we're doing.
How about rather than David, you have Brian West look at
Oh,
it?
sure.
I think,
Good idea.
I think he's very knowledgeable. He's also the ones that he appoints us. So I think going to him and asking him what he thinks would be more,
Gotcha.
he's more to give an honest answer.
Good call.
Not just somebody, you know what I mean, don't do this because you're going to upset them. You know what I mean? Type.
All right.
And if you don't have his email, I can send it to you.
All right, so I'll draft something and then circulate it around.
Do you mind
and-
drafting
Yeah, yeah.
something? We
That's
just
fine.
all said that it was you, but.
No, I'm glad to do it. I just didn't want to be like, I'll write it, you know, so if you guys wanted to
Okay.
contribute more. But,
The
all
other
right,
thing
sounds
is,
good.
while we're here, I heard from somebody through the rumor mill that you're done in the spring.
Done.
As far
No,
as the
no, not
finance committee, do you have to be
April.
reappointed?
So the HCG I would have to be.
Okay,
Am I done in the spring? I think my term would go through June 2018 if for the finance committee, whoever's position I filled would have expired, I think, in June 2018.
okay,
The HCG is in spring, that's April,
okay.
right? So that one I would have to be elected to because that's an elected position essentially.
Okay. Mhm.
That Donald was
I
in.
just want to make sure we're utilizing your services until you,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
to the last day. which is not to the fall, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And do you know if somebody's actively working on trying to get a replacement for Tom? I know it's probably much to appoints, but I don't know in terms of actually seeking people out.
Yeah, so I can ask Brian that. You know, he's always willing. I don't know why it's so hard to find somebody that sits on the, to sit on the finance committee. I think we have a good group that wants to work together, and I've said that from the get-go. We're willing to work together.
Yeah, I just want to fill the seat sooner rather than later, but I don't know the actual process. I
So
don't want to just
Brian is
rely
the
on our
actual
friends or-
one. Brian is actual. But
Right,
if
right.
you know somebody and you want to make a suggestion to him, then you would just give him a call or shoot him an email.
Alright.
Well, I don't think, well, in my case, I just volunteered. Nobody recruited me.
Right. So maybe we should ask to put it on Channel 5 that we're looking for somebody to join the finance committee. Blah blah blah.
Let people know.
Oh yeah,
And
hey,
let people
if you're
know.
interested.
Yeah, there
We
you
need
go.
more.
If you're interested, call Brian West. But I agree with you to try to find somebody. But remember, we
Yeah,
were.
I didn't know if it was kosher, like, oh hey, I've got a close friend who I want to recommend. That almost seemed like insider baseball, but
No, no, no.
And
We
is that-
need people.
Is
on
that the
on
case?
no.
Shoot.
I wish. No, I'll do some more thinking on it than knowing
Yeah.
that now. Friends I have that live in Hadley.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gotta have thick skin to sit on some of these boards.
Well, not just that, it's a lot, we do a lot of meetings,
A
we
lot
do
of time.
a lot of time,
Yeah.
and it's all volunteer, and a lot of
Mhm.
people don't want to, and you have to be we've had to be the bad guy in many, many cases
Mhm.
where, nobody else wants to say, no, nobody wants to be the bad guy.
I have no problem saying no, as long as I have an explanation with it.
Mhm.
Kind of like you can't get blood from a rock.
I mean, look at, for instance, let me use the library for an example. I mean, I really want a brand new library because I think that's going to be great.
Mhm.
But I kept saying no because I knew this is a problem, our
I
affording
said no
anything.
as well.
So, but it's like, okay, so we look like the bad guy in many, many cases, but we want it just as much as everybody.
We do,
I
but
mean, really do want that.
We
We don't have a solution.
I
fix it.
believe, and this is another thing that was said to us, that we need to be proactive and not reactive. And it's not us, it's the select board that needs to be doing that. You got these new buildings because of a walk-in petition of 100 signatures. Again, if the select board was out there trying to figure out how they can update buildings or make improvements, 5-year plan or whatever, and show the town people, this is what we're planning to do. Yes, we need a senior center, but we can't do it for 4 or 5 years.
Well,
What about your DPW? It works out of trailers.
I know.
You don't have, all these vehicles you're buying, they don't have coverage for them.
To be fair, a lot of that should be more of the Joint Capital Planning Committee's responsibilities, because there's a select board member on that, I sit on that from the Finance Committee, and they should have the 5-year plan, capital plan, and the long-term capital plan, which I'm still pushing for us to develop, but we don't meet that often. And that's another area where the Finance Committee could contribute more, because I see the select board doing a lot more of the active management of the town and the department heads, with David, whereas thinking 20 years or 30 years ahead with projections and finances should be more what we do. So to the select board's credit, I think.
So, okay. I get that. So let me just give you an example. You had the building committee. They came, they did all this
Yeah.
research on these buildings. They put a lot of hard work into it. What happens when the select board doesn't agree with it?
I think
Again.
had we picked up sooner, because we were kind of brought on halfway through that process, I think the Finance Committee should have been a main hub to work with the Building Committee on that,
Mhm.
back and forth, and then give our recommendation to this, the town. Obviously, the select board should be involved, but I was always kind of bummed that we weren't more actively working on the building projects just because we started so late as a
Right.
committee.
Right. And I kind of agree with you that if that continues, I mean, I don't know where they're at with their committee, now that we have these new buildings, you still have all these old buildings that you need to figure out. And somewhere, you know, I look at these $8,000 for custodial services for the senior center, $8,000 custodial services for town hall. And library, $5,600. You know, a while ago, or a few years ago, we hired one person to do the maintenance for all these, his name was Mr. Berg, I think it was, and now he's just doing a whole total different job, you know, so.
But again, that's the kind of stuff, and that's where we can work with the select board, right? So you bring in a building, you're like $12 million. Okay, there's a lot that needs to happen there, right? The building committee is obviously projecting all that out and figuring it out. Finance committee asks something like, all right, so what does that do to the taxes if we structure it trying to pay it off within 10 years or 20 years? That's a finance committee question, and we look at that. The other question that you can have is like, all right, well, what's the ongoing maintenance going to look like? What's our actual plan for building, and what's the timeline for that? That's the select board question, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we should be tag teaming with them on carving off different parts of reviewing a big capital project like that. But just because of how it's been, or you know, we've started up so late, the select board was doing all of that, trying to vet out, you know, the taxes of it and the management and the ongoing costs of it.
Yeah.
Just for example. So
I agree with you. So if you write that letter up and say, this is kind of what
where we're at, how we'd like the budget process to go. And
yeah.
Yeah.
And see what they say.
we'll do.
Because I'm all for working together, as long as, you know, our goals are, common goals the same, which is to give the residents of this town the best knowledge
So
that we
let's-
can provide them.
Does anybody, we almost all set
I was going to
here?
say, I definitely want to get out by 7:30 at the latest. Is there anything else people had? I had an update on HCOG, but besides that, I
Who
don't
will
think I can
see
think of.
David to be able to get this to him?
Um,
Is he working tomorrow?
as far as I know, yes.
Or does
I-
he have a box downstairs that we can
Yeah.
visit?
Sit under his door.
Yeah, let's slip it in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, after the meeting, we'll find a place.
All right, good.
So really quick, just go for the next agenda, just taking this down. Recreational marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to call it override context, so stuff like our capital history, revenues history, comparisons to other towns, you know, those types of things that we should be talking about. And then actually prepping for the override, just reports from the little subgroups on IT, HR, finance, and public safety.
Mm-hmm.
I think public safety will ultimately, because we're going to fold that into the budget no matter what. So,
Well, I mean,
That's its own
I'll
thing.
know more about the ambulance by then.
oh, cool. Perfect. We talked about IT, kind of this is where our head's been at with this fund request. HR and finance. HR, I know we signed, select board, I think, signed the
Jerry.
recommendation,
Oh, go ahead.
the recommendation, the letter of support to the Hampshire Council of Governments, who is trying to put together regional services to support HR.
Okay.
So like the admin portal or like employee resources and best practices,
Mhm.
right? To give town administrators and people without HR departments or small HR departments documentation and support, you know, behind the scenes. So I know we drafted that, but I think still above and beyond that, it'd be better if we actually had HR in some capacity in a staff form. So who was actually assigned to
It was, HR was me.
HR? Was you?
Yeah, and Jerry Devine. And
Okay, and you guys talked about
I will
that?
get working on that more. Again, I have to say that I have to take some time to deal with my elderly mom,
No
who's now
worries.
back home. So I'll be
Gotcha.
back on that.
Remember, end goal being that at town meeting, when we were pitching this override, you're the one that gets up and talks about HR. That's how we're thinking about this.
Okay.
So,
I'm
Whatever.
not a public speaker!
But-
Like you!
and I'm glad to get to do the talking if
Is
that's
she
what it comes to.
standing
But the point is, like, think about it in terms of, like, if you were going to get up, what would you want to know in order to pitch HR?
Yep,
That's
I
how
have
we're
no
thinking
problem
about
with that.
it. Finance, was that you?
I was public safety.
Public safety. Who was
I
finance?
am, I don't know who finance was, but I'm council on aging.
No, the finance
No.
director, the new position.
Yeah, somebody was
Oh,
going to
yeah,
look into.
yeah, I'm supposed to be involved in that. We haven't had any meetings about that or anything.
Gotcha. No worries.
I'll reach out to Jerry.
Cool. All right.
So Molly would be she's doing it.
Okay.
And I'm on the financial management team, but that's separate.
Right.
Yeah, we're looking for a person.
Cool. So for our next
Yeah.
meeting, we'll get reports on that. Last thing, if you care for the HCOG update. Because
I do.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, so I met with them a couple times for the full board meetings. I'm also on their strategic planning committee and their regional services committee, but the regional services committee hasn't yet met, so I haven't been able to sit in on that. So initial impressions, they are taking very seriously what happened with the audit, partly because it was so dire that it was a little eye-opening for some of them, and partly because it does actually affect their ongoing business with Hampshire Power, because you get a bad audit and people don't want to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So they're taking that very seriously. There's a lot more financial oversight and doing things on both an accrual and a cash basis. That was a big sticking point. So a lot of scrutiny over the budget. They've been drafting a letter and they're reaching out to the state legislature for some support, is what I'll say on that. Just because we know that however the HCOG is going to look in 5 years is very dependent on the kind of support, whether it's through taking on some outstanding liabilities or providing more revenues or just brainstorming, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
So they're working with state legislatures on that end. Obviously everything's held up for the holiday season. IT, they're actually making a recommendation for something pretty interesting. So the MBI, the Mass Broadband Institute, aren't you guys pretty familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically supposed to be an infrastructure laid out across Mass, and I think Western Mass specifically, for towns like Hadley to plug into to have high-speed internet, right? Problem was, it's kind of pricey, you know, and for what we get now, like, we don't really need to use that really high-speed internet. So the problem's been like, well, if you had high-speed internet, you could do all these great cool things with like cloud storage and like, you know, remote assistance and all these different things. But you don't have the high-speed internet, but you don't want the high-speed internet because you think it's too expensive. So the problem they've been trying to tackle is how to bundle that together. The services that you can get through having high-speed internet bundled with actually paying for the high-speed internet. So in the same way, like, think of your house, like, if you couldn't stream Netflix because you didn't have high-speed internet, all of a sudden that $60 a month you pay to Charter or Comcast doesn't seem so pricey, because the reason you get it is what it comes with. So the proposal that the HCG is coming up with is to connect to the MBI, to allow for a connection between the MBI and Connecticut's equivalent, because they also have this kind of infrastructure laid out, and they separately have services that you can only get if you're on that network, right? So you're a municipality or a school, you sign up for this service and you can get, I actually forget the specific services, but like, so cloud services, right? So cloud storage. So we're trying to connect the MBI with Connecticut in order to allow Massachusetts municipalities to join the MBI and use Connecticut services. So that's the incentive, right?
So do you need equipment to, if you get this high-speed internet, does our equipment need to be updated to be able to utilize that high-speed internet?
So part of that was in this, just because we already have a connection. I understand that there's already connection points that were already built all across Massachusetts, but we just don't utilize them. So the connection's already there. It would more depend on what services you want to sign up for. So if you want to sign up for something where all of your data is stored off-site, and every time you access it, you need to make that connection, then yeah, you need to speed your computer so you're always uploading and downloading data. But it's nothing that would require a terrible amount of capital up front. No.
Okay, that's my question.
It's just, you might need something a little newer than a 10-year-old
Because I'm
computer.
like all about that, you know, but I just want to make sure that our ancient equipment.
So that's the exciting stuff.
One
over
thing,
there.
which I haven't figured out, if we can get a lot of this stuff and they're so much further along and they have great services, why can't we just, why don't we just go with the FERCog?
Yeah, David's been looking into that. I'll say that's been the challenge for the HCOG, for the HCG. It has been their challenge is that the fees that we were paying were like, what, $5,000, $3,000 to be a member?
No, it's cheap. 3,000.
Yeah, I think $3,000 per year or
Yeah.
something like that. But you can still access all of their services even if you're not a member, really. So that's why Hadley decided to pull out, because there wasn't much benefit for.
In the benefits that you do get, we joined the HCOG. Why can't we join the FERCog?
Right.
And the FERCog seems to have gotten it together, and they already are doing a lot of this stuff. So
I thought we already decided not to use the HCOG anymore.
Well, our membership doesn't run out till.
Yeah, so
We
it takes
put them on notice.
I think at least 1 year to
Right?
pull out. So yeah, a notice. So you say we're quitting, and then you're still a member for a full year. But even then, if we weren't part of the HCOG, we can still use all these services. So,
I don't
you know, like there's co-op purchasing, stuff like Hampshire Power, whatever it is, we can still sign up.
I mean, I think that's great, but I see us doing a lot of effort and looking at some of the stuff, even by you, having, when then there's another company or another service that provides all this stuff, and it seems like, why can't we just join that?
Yeah, and I think for Hadley, we definitely, and especially in the short term, we should look at those
Yeah.
options and see what works for us, and David's been doing that. I know he,
Great.
even as like 2 weeks ago, he was having those conversations. So
So-
we can put that on the next agenda, actually, for COG.
Will you, when you're doing the minutes or writing up whatever, will you send me
Yep.
an email?
Send you a
Do
breakdown.
it, and I'll get an agenda out.
Yep.
If you, on whatever, since you have all those minutes. Do you want to meet on Thursday the 4th?
That's what I was gonna say. It's 7:30, so let's schedule the next meeting and get out of here.
Is that good, Terry?
Providing there's no snowstorms.
Have a
Yeah.
look and see here. You said January 4th?
Yeah.
That's a Thursday. Yep, I'm gonna be here.
Okay.
You can do it.
Works for me.
All right.
Did we like 6 o'clock?
I like 6 o'clock.
I like it, but
Yeah.
what do you guys think? 6 o'clock versus 7?
Mm-hmm.
I can do 6.
6, okay, thank you. All right, and so,
Do we have a select board meeting on that Wednesday?
Yes. Now,
Do you know if
yes,
that's
it
the
is.
tri-board?
It is.
It's good.
Supposed to be, yeah. I have a meeting with the financial management team on Tuesday at 5:30. The tri-board on Wednesday. And that would be on Thursday.
That Wednesday, probably tri-board I will not be at. It's first and third Wednesdays of the month are not good for me with my job. So I have my own meetings in Northampton that run me late,
Mhm.
so I won't be there for the 4th.
you won't be here for the 4th. If we made it later, would you?
No, the 3rd.
The 3rd, I'm sorry, the
You said
3rd.
Wednesday.
I will
Okay.
be here on the 4th, I won't be here on the 3rd.
Okay.
I just can't, if they change the tri-board meetings, you know, it's always on the 1st or the 3rd, I just can't do it.
And I know the,
Though I'd like to be there.
Oh, so Wednesday the 3rd is the tri-board meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And are we thinking to meet
I think we're just doing the first and third Thursdays.
the 3rd? Okay,
The 18th?
okay.
Cool, because
And I'll-
HCOG is the next.
And I can do January 18th, and if you want to keep it till 6, that's fine, but I won't be here right at 6. I'll be here probably 6:20 or something. So I won't get out until 6. It depends on traffic.
That's fine, start at 6.
I mean,
You're
as
talking
long
about
as
the
the
18th?
3 of you can make
On the
it.
18th that we're
You can say
doing?
6:30.
Yeah, and like I said, as long as the 3, but we just need a quorum. So as
Yeah.
long as we all can agree.
Do we want to do 6:30?
You can do 6:30. I mean,
Let's
if you're
do
not
6:30.
home
Yeah.
from work right here.
That way, if somebody can't come for some reason, then we're not, you know.
Mhm.
6:30,
Yeah.
okay. 6:30 on the 18th.
Cool.
In the meantime, I'll reach out to Brian West about replacement. But if you all have any suggestions, and I'll also ask him to put it on Channel 5.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
You know, we should have an unofficial rule that if you leave or your term expires, you should find your own replacement.
I should try.
You know?
You know, all these people who come to, you know, the regulars that come to the town meetings,
Mhm.
I wonder why some of them don't step up and join the finance committee. Because they've seen, you know, many of them seem really plugged in, really involved, really interested.
And I think they have their own agendas already. You know,
All
as
the
far
more
as
reason
what
for them to
they.
get on board and serve.
Well, sometimes I think people, you
This
know,
is why I say, okay, go ahead, finish what I'm saying. Sorry.
someone with an agenda is not necessarily the best person for the board.
Because they're only out for that one thing.
Yes. I think I remember someone that joined the board one time when they wanted their road to be, instead of a,
Yeah.
right, instead of from a private to a public road, and that happened and that person was off.
She didn't leave because of that, though.
No?
No.
Well, it just seemed like there was an agenda they had, and once it was done, it was done.
That's
your
like
point, there's
me
plenty of people at town
saying,
meeting.
well,
Yeah.
once the fire station is built next to my house, I'm done, you know?
No, but you've had it, no, that wouldn't make sense for you, because you've been so involved for so long. Well, I'm just
Right.
saying, people sometimes with an agenda, see, that's the one
Yeah.
thing about this board so far that
Mhm.
they've had, is nobody has a particular,
Yeah. I see what you mean.
it,
Well,
it,
at the very least, if we can't find somebody by town meeting, we'll announce it there. Say, hey, we've got
That's a great
openings.
idea. That's an excellent
Yeah.
idea.
okay.
All right, so I think
So-
we're good.
Yep.
Alright,
A motion to
nice see you
adjourn?
all. Happy
I make a
holidays.
motion
Yes,
to adjourn
Merry
and-
Christmas.
Second, all in
Right.
favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good
Bye.
night.